Well, hello again, everyone. Welcome back to another episode. What?
Just the way you said that was just like, well, hello again. Welcome to another episode of the Roundtable. It was very late night talk show. We're going to talk about marriage and Delilah and problems.
Sure.
It was good. I dug it.
This is the Roundtable after dark. We're chilling today.
We're going to get racy.
Hello, my name is Templar, and I'll bring you tonight 1 Corinthians chapter 13.
First.
I'm grossed out right now.
Yeah.
This is not what I signed up for.
Wow. Should we restart?
I don't know.
Yeah, hey,
well, we can always
again.
edit it.
Sorry.
Can always edit it out later.
Yeah, I'll fix it in
Welcome
post.
in, everyone. Welcome back for another week. It's great to have you here. Looks like there's already quite a few people hanging out.
Bougie's hitting on you in the chat.
I'm. Yeah.
Oh, bougie.
I'm joined again by Chino, Doc, and Nav. Welcome, guys. It's great to have you here. It's going to be a fun episode already, judging by how things are looking. So let's go around and see how everyone's been doing. And while I do this, I thought of a question earlier today. I was just cleaning some stuff up, and I was listening to a movie podcast, and it got me thinking about. They were talking about how some movies have aged for them. And so my question for today is, what movie did you really enjoy when you were younger? And you can determine the age range there. But for whatever reason now, it does no longer hold up for you. Like whether it's something about the visuals, something about the humor, something about whatever, it just doesn't really work for you anymore. And that's something I was thinking about. So Chino, we're going to go to you. How you been, man? And what's the movie that doesn't hold up for you anymore?
Good. My face got all red there a little bit underneath my hat, so I'm glad to have a reprieve from the pure appeal that's been happening in this channel. Movie-wise, goodness, I would have to say, this is going to be real stupid, The Land Before Time. I watched it, goodness, probably a year ago with she was, I think, 3 at the time, or 4, whatever. She was one of my nieces. And that movie, when I was growing up, that movie was like, I cried, it was just emotional. Oh my gosh, I loved it. And then I watched it again. I was like, this movie sucks. Like, it's cheesy. The voice acting is awful. The animation is real bad. It just all of a sudden, like, this Ducky character shows up and there's no explanation as to why, except that kids need comic relief. And
Sure.
Like, it's intentionally pulling at kids' heartstrings. Now, this is before animation got into the whole, like, let's make adult humor, in the kids' movies. So, like, Lego Movie, that type of thing. Even Toy Story. So, I think that would be my answer. I'm sure I'm going to come up with another one. Batman Forever. That also sucked. I really like that one.
That was never good.
It wasn't good. It was good in a campy way. It was good like you watch like Battlefield Earth or something. Like it's trash, but you watch it because you want to dog it. But I can't even dog it anymore.
No, you have to go to Batman and Robin for that.
Is that Mr. Freeze? Batman and Robin?
That's the one with Mr. Freeze. Yeah.
Yeah. The Iceman.
That's the one you watch because that's the one you watch because it's so bad. It's great. There's
everybody, chill.
Compilations on YouTube of all his ice puns.
Yep.
It's fantastic.
Yep. So there you go. Also, I don't know if you saw, I got these lights over here now that move when I talk.
Very fancy.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a whole lot.
Oh, it responds to your voice.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that. That is nice.
I'm talking.
Is it connected to your Steam Deck somehow? Or no?
No, we'll talk about Steam Deck later, though.
Disappointing.
Oh
okay.
Doc,
how you doing, man? How's it going,
I'm
Doc?
doing well.
It's good to have you back on. And what's the movie that doesn't hold up well for you?
Land Before Time is a good one. That one definitely doesn't hold up great. I think one of the ones for me, like I grew up watching this a lot, was some of the Indiana Jones movies. I think the first Indiana Jones movie
Okay.
does not hold up as well as I thought that anymore. That
The
was
first
kind of
one?
like mine. Yeah,
Doc,
I
we can't be
Okay.
I
friends.
like the second and the
We
third
can't
one
be
better.
friends.
I know.
I
I
was
like the
kidding.
Temple of Doom.
Usually when I hear about it, yeah, usually when I hear about, that's actually one of the movies that they were talking about on the podcast as does not holding up well is Temple of Doom. That
See,
inspired
I'm
this. That's
partial
funny
Temple of
that you
Doom.
mentioned that.
Hmm.
Oh.
But I think
Okay. Well,
I feel like I have a
think
lot of
people
nostalgia
find.
for those movies. So
Sure.
I think it's just like when I go back and watch them, I was like, oh, there's like that hit of nostalgia, but I'm like, these aren't great. Like they're fine.
Well, tying into our
Like
conversation later today or later in the episode, I think
We're gonna
Temple of
boycott
Doom
it.
is viewed as being somewhat problematic. In this day
Somewhat.
and age,
Holy
so-
crap! It is like 100,000% problematic right now.
We might have learned a little bit about where Chino comes down on that. So, all right.
I just wanted to watch
Oh,
my
man.
lights move again.
Oh, you just
You
Chino's
just
just gonna over exaggerate everything just so he can.
I don't
he's not
know
even
what
really
you're
looking at the
talking
screen,
about.
He's just like just seeing the seeing the lights fly. Dude. That's
Oh.
great. Saying hello to a couple
man.
people in the chat. Bougie, what's going on? Bootstraps, hello. And we got
Durain YF?
DL Rain. Is that DL Rain?
I think it's
Durain?
DI Rain.
Oh, Durain, hi. Hello.
Yeah.
Welcome in. Glad you could join us. Gwen Clark, hello.
Ooh,
Gwen
Little
Clark
Mermaid is a
says,
good
Oh,
one.
Little
yeah.
Mermaid is a good one, yes.
Oh, man. Don't hear. I'm glad my wife's not here to hear that.
What, really?
She would not be happy about anyone saying that The Little Mermaid doesn't hold up. She
mean,
loves
it
The Little
sucks.
Mermaid.
Oh my goodness. Oh man.
It's not great, but. And Bougie said The Lion King. Yeah, all right, Bougie. All right, man.
Alright, Bougie,
All
you
right.
can just go away.
Yeah.
I mean, Lion King one and a
but
half
thanks.
is the best Lion King. Like that's
I've
that's
never
a fact.
seen that. I don't think I've ever seen any of those like half like sequels or whatever, all those direct to DVD sequels that they did for those Disney
Yeah.
movies. But
I mean,
now
all the
how's it
DVD
going, man?
extras. Oh man, they were great.
Oh, it's going good. It's going good. Okay, for my movie, that doesn't hold. I'm just going with the first movie I thought in my mind when you said it. So we're going with this. Is Hook that has Robin Williams in it?
Nah,
where
get
he
out.
plays in a-
Oh,
Get out.
No,
Get out.
like no. Can I
Uh,
explain my position?
Boo.
Can I explain my position? It's a cult classic.
Bangerang.
I like the movie. But honestly, if you watch it, the costumes, everything, like, it doesn't hold up to, like,
It's
production value. It looks like I went to Disney World. I mean, that's the cool thing about it. It looks like I went to Disney World and rode a ride. And more than a movie. So there you go.
Sure.
I like the movie,
Okay.
though. I will watch it again. I'm
Watch.
just saying it doesn't hold up, so I would not be like,
you're
hey,
just
you need to
saying
watch
you're
this
just saying
awesome
the like
movie.
you're saying like the aesthetics don't hold up. I don't think the
Yeah,
aesthetics
the
were very
aesthetics
good when it was
don't-
made. So I mean that's fair.
I kicked him.
But like the
But
movie
also, it was
itself,
done-
I think, is pretty great. We kicked him.
But didn't wasn't it? It was a Steven Spielberg film. That's the whole thing, though.
It is Spielberg, yeah.
And so
Who's talking?
that's yeah. Anyway, there you go. Oh, you got rid of me.
just bullying people for their opinions.
Oh,
That's the
man.
round table for
We're
you,
gonna talk
everyone.
about bullying later today, okay? And like Chino's a great
Yeah.
example of it right now.
Just go burn the library
He's
down.
student.
He's canceling me out, guys. Okay.
Durain, it's going good, man. How are you? We're doing well. Chino agrees with me, Templar.
Yep.
Do you agree, Chino, that the
I
Lion King
agree.
is not aged well?
Well, it's just Jonathan Taylor Thomas. His voice as Simba is just atrocious.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
But
Um,
Jeremy Irons as Scar.
Oh gosh,
elevate.
next level. Yeah,
He's
and
great. And it
what's
was
his
very
face
it was
as
very
Iago?
disappointing to me that they didn't
Or
bring him
not
back
Iago.
for the live action one, or not the live action, but the new CG one.
Yeah.
that they didn't
Yeah.
bring Jeremy Irons back. To me, I get, they brought back James Earl Jones, but like to me, his voice is super iconic as well.
Yep.
The Datalorian, hello, hello. I'm playing it tonight when I get home from work. I assume you mean Hogwarts Legacy, and shame on you.
More on that later.
No, I've been playing it as well. I've been really enjoying it. I hope you're liking it if you've started it, and if not, get into it. I think it's really well done. So that's awesome, Datalorian. Bougie Hook is dope. Rufio is that dude.
Yes, he is.
We agree on that one. Bougie Hook is great. Nav is the delusional one here, not me. I mean, I wouldn't go that far. It can be both. Both can be true.
Yes.
All right, very good. For me,
I'm defending myself in chat right now.
it was
It's okay.
Yes, I see that. That's good. For me, the one that doesn't hold up is Ace Ventura.
What?
The first one.
Oh,
Doesn't hold up at all. I tried watching it a couple years ago. I could barely get through it. I can't do it. It's fine. Comedy is very subjective. That's fine. I'm not saying it's bad. It just, for me, it just doesn't. It no longer works.
How many movies?
It's also much.
How many other
it's also
movies
much
can you talk with your
than
butt?
I remember it being.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
How many movies do I want that to happen?
All.
The answer is
all.
one.
No, the answer is all. Just imagine Citizen Kane, the main character of Citizen Kane, walks up into the courtroom and starts talking with his butt. Come on.
I've never seen Citizen Kane,
comedy.
and I kind of don't want to.
Imagine the
That's another one of those
Mandalorian
movies
walking up
that's, like,
with the child and turns around and screams at the
seen The
child with his
Mandalorian.
butt.
Never seen The Mandalorian. Keep them coming. It's fine. No, it just doesn't. I mean, I like Jim Carrey a lot, but it just doesn't. It's much cruder than I remember it being.
It is.
There's like a lot of content stuff in it that I don't remember from when I was younger, and it just doesn't. I mean, there are parts of it that are still funny, but overall, like I loved it when I was younger, and now it just does not work for me anymore.
It's fair. You got older.
And to be honest, I'm kind of nervous to go back and watch like something like Dumb and Dumber because I feel like it's going to be the same thing, even though I also loved that one when I was younger too.
No, that one actually holds up way better than Ace Ventura. Just the humor is it's not as crude. Like Jeff Daniels is really, really great. Like honestly, Jim Carrey's good, but Jeff Daniels makes that entire movie. He's really good, and
he kills it. Yeah,
I watched it. I watched that like a year ago, maybe just under a year ago. So it's still rock solid.
Okay. Well, I won't worry about that one too much then. So Darian or D-Rain, I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm probably just butchering your name. I keep saying it differently like every time I say it. But yeah, we have services every week on Wednesday. You're just asking about Lux. And then the main place that we kind of talk and hang out is on Discord. If I don't know if someone can throw the Discord or if someone already did.
Doc got it.
Thank you, Doc. And then yeah, we have our services on Wednesday night, and then we do the Roundtable every week. Every week on Fridays, and 1 week is spiritual discussion, which is this week eventually, and then our off-topic, our other weeks are pop culture related in one way or another. Okay, though, moving on. So maybe a little quickly, because as banter goes, there always tends to be a bit, and we do want to have enough time for our main topic, but I still want to go around. And so what have you guys been up to? What have you been playing? What have you been reading? What have you been into the last week or so since we've chatted? Doc, I'll start with you. What have you been up to, man?
Sure. Haven't been up to a whole lot. We just got a bunch of snow yesterday, so like 8 inches of wet, sticky stuff. So that was fun to snow blow out in the dark because that's when it finally stopped snowing.
Very good.
So other than that,
That's
living
lovely.
in the winter wonderland here. Yeah, it was great. Loved it. I actually kind of enjoyed snow blowing. It's oddly therapeutic. But anyway, but as far as like what I've been doing or playing, I've been getting back into Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah.
Basically, I wanted something
Great
to
game.
play again that I was waiting for Hogwarts Legacy to come out, and I just forgot how fantastic that game is. The whole thing, beginning to end, the aesthetic it has a one consistent theme throughout, and it's fantastic. So if you have not played it, I would highly recommend the director's edition on like PS4, PS5, whatever is out for like $30 or something like that. Like, it's a very solid game if you have any like nostalgia for kind of like samurai like movies or stuff like that. You can play the whole movie in like black and white film grain if you want, which is so fun. But
Yeah,
just the whole aesthetics of like
Kurosawa mode or whatever it's called.
Kurosawa. Yeah, yeah. So if you are partial to those movies or have any nostalgia for that, recommend it. But the game's just great. Like you increase your abilities by going and writing haikus and contemplating on things like death and fear and all this stuff. And it's just these moments of like this intense action game where you just like pause to like sit in a hot spring and like reflect on your past life is like so cleverly done, and the combat is fantastic. So love it. That's what I've been up to lately. I'm just waiting for my copy of Hogwarts Legacy in the mail, and then I'm gonna start playing that. But in the meantime, I'll be a samurai.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great. I tried to jump back into it a little while ago because they came out with some DLC, something Island. I forget what it's called. So I jumped back into it because I was going to play that because I had started like a new game plus. And then I was going to play through it again. And I didn't end up sticking with it, but it is an excellent game. I did beat the main campaign a while ago. It is fantastic and it's beautifully designed. Awesome. Chino, what you been up to, man?
Yeah, weekly Steam Deck update. It's still awesome. I've been this is the 12th week running. My youngest son, it's lacrosse season, and so I'm spending every Tuesday and Thursday night out at the lacrosse field for practice. And so I'll be in my truck. I'll usually have my laptop, and I'll work on some sort of video or something for about 45 minutes. I'll eat dinner, and then I'll spend half an hour to 45 minutes. Lately, I've just been playing as a Viking in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and that game still runs fantastically on the Steam Deck. Like, not a flawless or not a drop in frame. I've had one crash so far, and that was just because I was being an idiot and I cranked all the settings up to ultra just to see what it could do, and it crashed it. So I've been playing that, and actually I have had to be playing my Steam Deck because last week, if you listened to the Roundtable, you heard that my PC was blown up into a million different parts. I finally got my PC put together, put a brand new 3070 in there, which is freaking dope. 4K gaming on a 3070. I mean, that thing doesn't even... It's not even like whiffing at it. The only problem is, so I ended up having to buy that big tower that we talked about. I didn't get a mid tower. I bought a full tower, which is fine. It looks awesome. It's white. It's super awesome. All the RGB nerd stuff. I have a power meter hooked up over there, and just because I like to see the wattage that I'm using, and my power was going from 100 watts used to about 250 watts used from one outlet when I was playing something like Call of Duty. And that was only at 1440, and that was super scary. So, ladies and gentlemen, graphics cards, they use a lot of power. Please make sure you update your PSUs. Please get a better power supply so you don't short out the entire house. There you go. Bougie says, I've been thinking about Chino a lot. Thanks, buddy. I have a coworker who is all giddy because he got his PS5 to stream through his Steam Deck, so all week I've been hearing about that. Yeah, it's called Moonlight, and it's freaking awesome. Because the Steam Deck, I don't know if you heard 3 minutes ago, it's awesome. Back to you guys.
Stream through the Steam Deck. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great. So are you going to be picking up Hogwarts Legacy, Chino, or no?
I am. I talked with Greg at Beggyman in Discord, and everybody knows Greg Miller. He and I were probably going to play it this weekend, or I'm going to watch him, and he's going to kind of help me through some stuff this weekend. I don't know. Is there co-op in that game?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. No, there isn't. It's totally single player.
Huh. Okay.
It's totally single player.
Maybe Greg just wanted you to watch him play, but
I think that's what it is. I think he
could be
wanted.
fun.
We were talking about me helping him get streaming, so maybe that's what it was. Maybe he just tricked me into it.
Sure. He just wants your help streaming, and he wants you to sit there and watch him stream, play the game, and drink some milk.
Being like a child. So yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Nice. All right, Nav, what you been up to, man?
Oh, just the kind of the same old. I am kicking away at Persona 5 Royal on my Steam Deck. Weekly update here. Almost into the month of September in the game, so just to let you kind of know where I am. I'll finish up the last few days of August. About to start the new palace, new scenario, new thing I have to do to figure out what's wrong with someone inside their mind and change their heart and all that stuff. Crazy game, good story. If you like anime, you'll like the game. It's like part visual novel, part life sim, part RPG. That's the best way to put it. It's just like it has all those things. Other than that, I've been reading the Dresden Files still. I am slowly. I'll admit, Templar, I did not read as much as I want this week. I'm almost done with the book, and so about to start with it. I'm going to try and finish it up this weekend. Just been a crazy week. So I've been reading those. Got a new book. I have like 3 books. I have 4 books I'm reading now. It's just one of those things. I need to stop buying books.
I hear that.
I bought the Analog Christian by Jay Kim. He's a pastor in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, dude, that is a great book.
Oh, you know that book?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Like every book I get, Chino's like, "That's a great book," and I'm like, "Okay, Chino, just give me your list here."
I have to read a lot of leadership and pastoral books as the pastor, but like that dude, the way he talks about kind of the future of digital ministry, and it is mind-blowingly great.
Yeah, so I'm doing that because next month I'm doing a series on technology, internet, social media with the students. So I'm just kind of reading up on that, and that's the book. I listened to an interview. Preston Sprinkle interviewed him on his podcast, Theology in the Raw, and that was like a very good. So if you want to know who Jay Kim is, he actually talks about working with people in the tech industry in Silicon Valley and being a pastor to them. It's very interesting, a very different perspective than what we have pretty much in any other part of the world, honestly. And so I'm excited about that. I'm going to start that this weekend as well. But then that's pretty much it for games. Let's see here. Anything else for games? Just trying to think here. Been playing Marvel Snap, MTG Arena on the go. I am working on with my friend. I need to talk to you, Chino, if anyone else who does D&D. I'm working on getting a campaign together, so we'll talk about that later. But that's what I've been doing. It's been a good week. Been busy, but yeah.
Sweet. Nice. Which book are you on in the Dresden Files?
I am on book. I can pull it up right now as I. Why don't you tell us how about your week and then come back to me and I'll tell you exactly what book. Okay, Templar.
Sure. Okay. Well, I finished reading the Dresden Files yesterday. So I finished book 17. So that was great.
How many are there?
Very good.
21?
There are 17. So
okay.
I got through. I'm up to where it's finished for now. I mean, the series isn't done, but he hasn't got any farther yet. I think he said he was planning on doing 20-ish and then like a kind of final trilogy to kind of cap it off. So it's going to be, something like 23 books. But when the last 2 came out, they both came out in the same year because he's also writing another series actively at the same time. And so the next book in that series is supposed to come out, and then the next Dresden books are supposed to come out. So hopefully I don't have to wait too long, but I mean, that's what happens. I read all 17 in like 2 months. So it's,
oh wow,
there's a lot. I just kind of really grinded my way through them, but I think reading them all that close together is not allowed me to really remember them all that distinctly, to be honest. Death Mask. Which one is that?
It's cool.
Oh, number 5. Okay.
I am looking it up. Yeah,
number 5. Yeah. Okay. Very nice. Yeah. So I finished that series. There are 2 other books that are like side stories of either taken from like RPGs set in the world or like other short stories he's written and sort of compiled. One of them is called Side Jobs. So it's like kind of shorter, more bite-sized stories within the same universe. So I might check those out. and then I'll have to move on and find something else to jump into. I picked up a book by Jocko Willink called Extreme Ownership, and I want to get into that because I've heard good things about it. So that might be next after, especially if I want to read something sort of non-fiction, right? So we'll see. Other than that, I've been playing Hogwarts Legacy. I mean, we'll be talking about it here in a bit, but I've been playing that. I've been streaming it a bit. It's been really fun. I've been enjoying it a lot, really getting into it. We'll talk about it a bit more, but I think it's very well designed. I've run into a couple bugs, but nothing game breaking. And it's pretty clear that the people who made it really loved the world of it, and they did an excellent job. It's very, very detailed game, and it feels very much like you're kind of in that same world. It's very immersive. So I think they did an excellent job with it. So we'll get into the drama around it here in a few minutes, but the game as itself, just as a game, I think is very well made. Beyond that, I've been trying to find something to watch. Obviously, we're watching The Last of Us. We'll be talking about that next week, the next 2 episodes. But beyond that, I tried to watch. I watched the first episode of a show called Carnival Row on Prime Video that stars Orlando Bloom is the main character in it. And it's sort of period piece. It's sort of like it's its own fantasy world, but it's sort of similar to, say, Victorian England with like fae creatures and magic to some extent, though. So it's sort of kind of a mix there. It seems okay. I might give it one or two more episodes to see if it really grabs me, and then I'll sort of decide if I want to like really pursue it. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all that's been going on with me.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Nice.
There's a Windows installer now for Cobalt. Easiest to use when you use the AI button to pick your model and download it. I have a 3090 with 24 gigs, so I can run their larger models. So a 3090.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's huge.
The 3090 it's a big card. Yeah. I mean, that's mostly for like work purposes, right? It's not really a gaming card.
I mean, you can do games, but yeah, that's for
you
modeling.
Certainly can. But the performance above the 3080 is like 10% or something in gaming.
Yeah.
Like it's not at all worth the price difference if you're only going to use it for gaming. But that's awesome. That's a hefty card. But with the talk of Hogwarts Legacy, we'll transition into our main topic for today and some things around it. It's not just about the game, but sort of just some of the discussion and the controversy surrounding it. And this topic was actually suggested by Nav, so I'm going to throw it over to Nav to kind of walk us through his thought process, how he came to it, and how he sort of, what his sort of vision for the topic was.
Nav with the lackadaisical,
I'm here, yeah. It was me. I'm at fault. Okay. So, no, how I was thinking of it this week, because we try to, Templar, you throw it out like, hey, what do you want to talk about? We try to brainstorm a little bit before we come on an episode and be like, hey, what should we talk about today? We're about to start in 2 minutes, just try to be better.
Yeah, that wouldn't be ideal.
That's never happened before, guys.
No, we've never done that. That's never happened.
Yeah, that's never happened. Okay. And so, but anyway, Hogwarts Legacy was coming out, and I like Harry Potter. I've read all the books when I was younger and stuff like that. I'm not like, like a giant Potter fan or anything else, but I enjoy it. I enjoy it. I enjoy the series. I enjoy the books. I thought they were good books. And I started thinking about all this with Hogwarts. It looked really cool. It looked like, okay, this looks like a game that's basically like an RPG. Not semi-open world basically, and you can just you can have fun. You can actually be like a wizard in Harry Potter, and Hogwarts, and I'm like, that just sounds fun. Okay, let's just say, it just sounds fun. And, explore rooms, all that stuff and everything else. But so I was thinking about that, then been listening to gaming podcasts. There's some that are just like, I'm not playing it because of the controversy with J.K. Rowling, which we'll get into that in a second. Some are like, she has nothing to do with the game. Yeah, she does get royalties because she was the creator of Harry Potter, but WB, the people, Avalanche was it's a studio that made it. There was no input from her or anything, And so it was like all this stuff going back and forth, and seeing people like, if you it's like if you love, what was it? I'm trying to think here. It's like you need to take people are basically you need to take a stand. If you buy this game, basically, you're homophobic. That's how it came across. It's like if you buy this game,
Yeah.
you are homophobic. That's what it came out. I'm like, and there's some people are saying like, well, I'm not, and I'm going to buy 2 copies of the game, not just one, just 2. And like, and it was like going back and forth. I seen people like, oh, I bought a digital and a physical because I'm just doing that. Okay. And it's like this pushback. Anytime you try to cancel something, there's always a pushback, whether it's boycott, canceling, we're going to talk about that. There's always this pushback, and you see it big time. And so I started thinking about that. It's like, wow. And then there's been bullying happening. We'll go into it a little bit more. Like, people are not streaming it on Twitch because people are trying to either bully them, dox them, stuff like that, because they're playing this game. Just because they choose to play a game that literally has nothing to do with J.K. Rowling, except that she's the one that created the universe, the original universe, basically. Anyway, so, and then I started thinking about, like, okay, cancel culture, like, there's been a lot of talk about cancel culture and everything else. And then I started thinking about boycotting, because, like, back in the 80s and 90s, like, Christians boycotting things was, like, such a big thing. It was, like, boycotting Pokemon, that was a thing that I was like, oh, Pokemon means pocket monsters. They're demons. You shouldn't play it because it's like secular. And I was just like, I mean, it goes down the whole, like, boycotting. And it was like Christians like to boycott Disney. They boycott Walmart. They boycott, they'll just pick something to boycott, it seems like. I'm just saying in general, not all Christians are like this, but, just like in the evangelical space, it seems like there's this. And I'm saying, like, was like the cancel culture, this is my mind thought. It's like, okay, we have this whole cancel culture thing with Harry Hogwarts Legacy. I'm like, but did Christians actually popularize this by all the boycotting they did, like in the 80s and 90s? And this is kind of like the fruition of it, like the pushback. And that's so I'm like, hey, you want to talk about this, guys? Because that's where my mindset went, from Hogwarts Legacy to cancel culture to Christians boycotting things. And I'm just like, I wonder if there's like a correlation between that. And maybe there isn't, maybe there is. Maybe it's just because just how people are, and they just want to take a stand on something, whether they're right or wrong. But that's what I was thinking when we were talking about this, or when I wanted to bring this up, because just the idea and the view is just because of someone does something, or someone who created something. Okay, example, Volkswagen. We know Volkswagen cars, right? The Volkswagen Beetle, everything else. Do you know who was the original person to actually get that thing all created and everything?
Hitler.
Nazi Germany. Yet, if you're going on this thing, it's like no one should do anything with Volkswagen, period, because of where the VW Beetle came from. I'm just saying, like, in my mind, this is where I'm thinking. I'm like, he partnered, Hitler got a company to make this car for military use for the Nazis, everything else. And because of that, yeah. And then I started thinking about this, looking at it too. It's like there's review game sites that actually have given this game a 1 out of 10, not based on the merit of the game, but what the game stands for. And I'm just there like, that's a hit piece and not journalism. And I'm seeing this, like I say, journalism has just gone like down the drain with video games. Basically, with video games, there's always agenda being pushed in reviews. It seems like, if there's not what they like. And it's like nothing in the game was like, the game was, where was it here? I have it pulled up here. I hate that I had to click on the article and give this article a click too, by the way, but I did for research purposes. Just going to state that, okay? I didn't want to.
Real journalism. You have to click on even the bad links.
It's like this. Yes. Like, I was like this. I was like, why not? Okay. This is what this person said. There's a direct correlation between how open Rowling becomes about her bigotry and how flat and heartless Wizarding World media has become. I don't think it's a coincidence. This is a game review, by the way, okay? We're not talking about the game right now. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's because the LGBTQA plus people and general and allies are some of the best creative minds in the world, and these films in this game were made largely without them. I'm like, okay, I want to see evidence of this too, okay? Let's see here. It goes about it, then it just goes into about the gaming industry, what the gaming industry is. It's very diverse, and I'm like, but is this a game review here, or but also some of the things it talks about is just being like the game is anti-Semitic. Oh yeah, right here.
What?
The story is rooted. This is about the game. This person wrote. The story is rooted in anti-Semitic tropes. The gameplay feels dated. The graphics feel like they're a couple of generations behind. All the characters are one-dimensional. It doesn't stay true to the established lore. Every character feels like an off-brand version of the characters we know and love. There's no sense of place, no magic, no heart. That was the synopsis right there of the review. And I'm like, is this guy actually, or whoever it is, this person, playing the game? I'm just curious, or is this just a hit piece? And gave it a 1 out of 10. I don't think I've ever played a game that was one. I played some bad games, guys, but a 1 out of 10 is like a broken, buggy mess. Like Cyberpunk on the PS4 was like a 1 out of a 10. All right, that's a 1 out. You can't even play it. It would crash, delete your 5, stuff like that.
Yeah, assuming you were even capable of playing it.
Yeah, without burning your house down.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, when I first
Exactly.
loaded that on my PS4, it was an airplane taking off.
Yep.
And then the game ran fine until I
Yes.
got in my first gunfight, and then I went to about 2 frames a second. I was in full Matrix bullet time with that bad boy.
Unintentional bullet time.
Yeah, there was no.
And I guess
The feature, not a bug.
And I guess I should go. I guess I should go back real quick. What people are mad about, because Rowling, I think it was like several years ago, maybe longer than that, like over 10 years ago, basically was accused of transphobia because she liked a tweet that says trans women are men in dresses, and then she also wrote or mocked the idea of the phrase "people who menstruate" (quotations) "people who menstruate" could refer to anything other than women, and that's where the whole controversy comes from. Just for clarification, it's like that's where the controversy stemmed from, was over those basically that tweet that she liked, what she said was for research purposes, and then also saying basically saying, because instead of saying women, it was like people who menstruate. He's like, well, the only people who can menstruate are women. So but anyway, and so people were getting mad about that, and that's where she became a homophobic and everything else. And I'm just like, and also as a culture, we like to throw phrases around, just like, like
right. Well, we can get into a little bit
has lost
more.
Meaning.
Sure. Yeah. A lot of terms get thrown around. A lot of ifs and icks and lots of things get thrown around. But we'll jump into it here, and then we'll kind of get into more of it, because there's a fair bit we could talk about. I suppose a good place to start is, actually, I just want to start in general with the idea of, should we judge art based on its creator rather than the art itself? Because I think at this point we can safely say that video games itself can be a piece of art, just like film, just like television, just like actual paintings or novels or what have you. And in this case, not even the actual creator of the game, but the creator of the world. And should a property that exists within it be judged based on the opinions or based on your feelings towards the person who was involved in creating it? Is that something that should be separated, or should we take that into consideration? Chino, I'll go to you first, and then we'll go to Doc.
So the entire thing here, and we'll talk about, Nab brought up the Volkswagen thing, which is a fantastic way to kind of start the argument. There's a lot of snowballs that have to roll down hills to turn into avalanches before you get to the actual creator of things. So if you take things that are on the face value created by somebody, so I'm thinking of, I don't know, one of my all-time favorite movies is Fight Club. We've talked about that in the past couple of months. David Fincher, an out-and-out atheist, a nihilist to the core, was the guy who directed it. Chuck Palahniuk, the guy who wrote it, an all-and-out, Fanta as well, absolutely, an out-and-out atheist, an out-and-out nihilist, same thing. But the art he created in Fight Club, again, messages aside and everything else aside, is fascinating. It's mind-blowingly good and still holds up to this day, going back to your question of the day. So in that sense, you do have to divorce the art from the artist. There are a number of things that live in this gray area. The problem with what we do in popular culture, modern culture, I guess I should say, is that we love to polarize everything. It's either a yes or no. Everything is very binary. It's on or off. It's black or white. It is yes or no. And I think we need to learn to think a little bit more critically. And that's not just Christians. That's everybody. We need to learn to have a critical eye for things. And critical not meaning I'm going to go on Twitter and just absolutely hashtag the crap out of this and blow up somebody's spot. So for like Harry Potter, sins that don't lead to death. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much every sin doesn't lead to death as long as we have the right Lord behind it. There's only one sin that Paul talks about, and that's blaspheming the Holy Spirit. And we don't have to preach a sermon on that. But the going back to the idea of living in the gray, there's a tension that we have to manage. It's not a problem we will solve. It's a tension we will manage in how do we look at art that is created. So like, let's even go to something very simple. The statue of David, right? It is this modern, majestic thing, but the creation of the statue of David was surrounded by hypocrisy, by money. The actual artist himself had a whole lot of problematic things going on. And yet we look at that, and that is sitting in near the basilica, and it is this just monumental moment of precision. What is any different from something like Harry Potter or Fight Club, or we can take it to Volkswagens if we want. The thing that I always come back to on this as well, and then I'll shut up, is I just got done watching The Good Place again with my son. One of the main characters of The Good Place, there's a recurring thing when he finds out that he's dead, and he says, and this is a spoiler, but like he finds out he's in the bad place, and he says, "Oh my gosh, I figured out why I'm in the bad place. It's because of the almond milk." And the first time he describes it is, well, almonds, I knew almonds were bad for the environment and almond milk is bad, but I just drank too much almond milk because I loved it so much, and that's why I'm here. And that is a snowball rolling down a hill to an avalanche of an argument. And if we are going to take that argument, we cannot be on this stream right now on Twitch, because Twitch belongs to a certain Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is problematic. The camera I'm using, the microphones you guys are using, the computers we're all using, etc., 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 all have some form of immorality or homophobia or transphobia or something involved in them. And if we are to start going back to the roots of everything, we are going to end up in a puritanical, weird lifestyle that does not mesh with culture, and that ultimately takes us out of what Paul says in the book of 1 Corinthians, where he says, look, you need to be in the world, not of the world. And I'll shut up now.
Doc, it seems like you were on board with that or had something to add on to that, or what's your kind of response there?
Yeah. I mean, I think, like, with talking about art separate from the creator, right? Some of my favorite pieces of literature ever written, from my personal perspective, are from H.P. Lovecraft. Like, who, there is no defense of that man as, like, a person. And like, who he was and what he stood for, 0 out of 10 defense for who he was as an individual. But looking at like what some of his stories he made, and like how his concept of like horror and like the unknowable, right, were so integral to the genre that I think like you have to like still include those things. And I think it's similar with some other aspects, right? One second, I need to turn the music volumes a little loud. But I just want to see what Gwen Clark is here. Yeah, concept of royalties are different, though. Who actually profits when you purchase a VW? Buy something with a Statue of David on it, buy a modern book, movie, game.
Mm-hmm.
Slightly different, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is. Yeah, the idea of royalties is a really interesting topic, right? Because a lot of creators, like, you know, J.K. Rowling, she became one of the richest, I think she was for a while, the richest author ever. She was a billionaire. And I think alone in like 1 year, she made like $700 million off of just the book publications. She made like 200 some million off of like a play, The Cursed Child, in like 1 week. And those royalties and stuff, right? And so yeah, there's that element of supporting a individual that you may not agree with. And I think it's interesting that like games like Hogwarts Legacy are so easy to write pieces on, right? As Nav brought up, like it's so easy to play 10 minutes of the game, or honestly just watch someone else play it on YouTube, and you can compose an article, right? Because like it's super easy to do. But where the money actually lies is things like Universal Studios. Every part of every ticket sales goes to J.K. Rowling. Like people aren't saying we shouldn't go to Universal Studios anymore because, well, that's a hard thing to go stand out in front of the, you know, the ticket booth and tell people like, hey, you shouldn't be doing this because you're supporting this, you know, individual, right? But it's really easy to write a 1 out of 10 article and then you can just kind of put it on the website and be like, I did my part. Like, and a lot of people consider that and do themselves a disservice of like saying like, hey, I'm this, you know, I'm trying to be like as proactive as possible about this, and then, you know, it doesn't ever actually do anything. It actually probably polarizes people to the other side, because as we talked about, as soon as someone says you can't do something, there's going to be 2 or 3 other people on the other side of it. They're like, well, if you tell me I can't do it, now I'm going to do it regardless. Because that's just how humans are, I think.
Yeah.
But
or they want to do it even more. They want to do it even more. Or like Nav said, they buy 2 copies of the game instead of 1, because it's just like, not only am I going to do it, I'm going to do it like more than I would have otherwise.
Yeah.
Sorry,
and then finally, like the point that Chino said, like, no, you're good. But like you said, we're commanded to be of this world, like, or we're in this world, but not of this world, right? Like, how are we as Christians going to fulfill the Great Commission, right? To make disciples of all peoples, of all nations, if we ourselves just anything that looks slightly not like the Word of God, we just shun not only that item, but the people around it and the creators and all of this stuff, and close ourselves off. That's the opposite of the Great Commission. That's the opposite of like what we're called to do. And that doesn't make us welcoming or loving. Like Paul was preaching these ideas of love and peace and gentleness and kindness and faithfulness when Christians were being slaughtered like en masse for their beliefs. And sadly, there are areas of the world where that's still happening today, but like he was still preaching those things in that cultural context. And I think if we as modern Christians don't continue preaching those same things and like living in the gray, like, and being there as a resource for people, like we're just closing ourselves off, and then what are we actually doing, right?
There's an interesting argument, and I'm gonna jump all over this one real quick. So Gwen Clark and I are having a good discussion here in the chat, and Gwen is bringing up a couple points, and I'm not gonna I'm not arguing with you, by the way. I'm simply stating my side of it. Gwen pointed out that origin is one thing, so absolutely correct. Royalties, funding, supporting is another, at least to Gwen, and you're 100% correct. It almost, this is where the levels of gray fall in, and this is where Paul talking to, and I think it's in the book of 1 Corinthians, where he says like, hey, if you're eating meat that was sacrificed to idols, you know, it's fine for you, but like if somebody points that out, you probably shouldn't eat it. So that's that type of thing of like, hey, do what you can do for your own faith. If it's gonna, if it feels like it's gonna be something that you're gonna struggle with, don't do it. But if somebody else, if you see a brother or sister doing it, then they're not harming their faith. That's fine. Now that's different than royalties, funding, all of those other things. And so this is almost like, it would almost be helpful to go to Jesus and be like, all right, God, listen, here's the deal. I need like levels. I need like levels of evil or levels of separation here, because like my example was Apple. I love not love. I'm an Apple fanboy. I like Apple products. I like talking about Apple tech. I like talking about tech in general. Just so happens that Apple. That's fine. I'm controlling the stream right now. You can't kick me out. I like talking about Apple products. I like talking about tech in general. Apple does some pretty skeezy things, just like pretty much every corporation in the world. And so, like, what's the level I have to get to, like the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, before I have to say, like, nah, I can't use this? For me, and this is where I hope Gwen and I are starting to see eye to eye, is that it's if it's like direct funding. So like if I'm going to go out and listen to Guar or something, like Guar's music is what it is, but like we all know what Guar stands for, and we all know that they're kind of like a satanic, misfit, nihilistic band. Like, I'm not going to go to one of their shows. I'm not going to give them money. So that type of thing. Like I'm going to use that level of separation. That's just me. But it all comes for me down to the level of your own personal testimony. And Nav brought up something that was very interesting that I don't know that he intentionally meant to say, but he said that Christians are real good at boycotting, or are really, they really make public boycotting. And that is a stigma.
Whether we're good at it, whether Christians are good at it or not, I think is a different question. But certainly have been active in it.
I agree, and that's unfortunately we're in a very polarized.
Good at being active. There we go.
Maybe not good at doing it. Maybe not good at being active in the right way. It's just like the politicalization of everything that happens in the West right now. It's just like the religious right kind of rising up and saying nationalistic Christianity is the way that we need to live things. To me, it's the same. It's the same blanket statement of, well, I'm a Christian, and so I need to stand for this, and come hell or high water, I'm not going to listen to your opinion, and I'm not going to listen to everything. And it's like, well, I think we're not loving our neighbor if we do that. And I know, Gwen, that's not what you're saying, and I know Nav wasn't saying that, but I think we need to be able to learn how to listen and treat these topics with a little bit more, peace. As a group. Also, Gwen just followed up. I don't think I ever really disagreed. Just stuck out to me how VW versus Hogwarts examples had some similarities, but also that distinction. Totally agree. And I appreciate you joining in the conversation here, because like this is what makes this show fun for all of us to do. So please keep all of that coming to us. Back to you guys in the studio.
Sure. Okay. Very good points. There's a lot that kind of was brought up there. Coming back to you, Nav, did you have any thoughts about anything Doc or Chino sort of brought up there? What are your kind of thoughts about it?
Yeah, it was a good extension of like what I was thinking, and so to help put it in, so it was a good perspective from them. And I don't want to say like, oh, I don't agree. I agree with you guys, so I'm not gonna be the devil's advocate right now, but I do want to bring something up here. It's from a website, the Gospel Coalition. I don't agree with everything on there, but sometimes they do have some good stuff. Like a teacher of mine once said, you have to learn to eat the fish and spit out the bones. Okay, so that's always stuck with me. It's a stupid saying. I'm like, I don't want to eat fish with bones in it, but if you do, don't eat the bones. So you have to use discernment with whatever you read, especially, in all things, honestly. But I thought this is really good about what they wrote about boycotts, basically, because about Christians boycotting and stuff. This is part of one of their articles. It says, the righteousness of a cause cannot be imputed to the tactics. Even when we have legitimate concerns about a corporation's activities, boycotts are almost always an improper abuse of power. Rather than being a loving rebuke, boycotts become a form of moral extortion. By cutting off economic ties with a corporation or business, the boycotters are using coercion to force people to do something they're not willingly to do themselves. While Christians may have legitimate reasons for not using a certain product or associating with a particular business, banding together to cut off commerce to an otherwise licit venture has no obvious biblical warrant. And I just thought that was pretty interesting. And it was also, to clarify, the term boycott, it basically means it's the refusing to use, buy, or deal with a business as an expression of protest as a means of economic coercion. And the key parts, the coercion part, basically is are Christians through boycott are we to coerce people to do something that they're not willing to do themselves? And like, is that like, in a sense, it's like we can't force, in the same way, we can't force the gospel on someone. They have to be willingly to accept Jesus as their savior. They have to be willing to accept Jesus. We can't coerce. We've seen that throughout history with the Catholic Church and other denominations trying to coerce people into becoming a Christian. It doesn't work. And the same thing with business. We're trying to change. It's like with Chino said and Doc said about Christian nationalism and stuff like that. You're trying to change like a moral without changing the heart. And the heart has to be changed before. So like with boycotting, it's like, yeah, you don't have to buy a product and everything else. But when you're forcing other people to do what you think is right, that's where it becomes the issue.
It's an interesting idea. I've never considered a boycott as something where you're trying to force other people to do it. You're simply trying to convince. I've typically seen as you're trying to convince other people like of your position so they will also join with you in it. Although that could have just been like, that could just be semantics. That might just be like language.
It is, because think about this.
And how we're describing it.
Yeah. If you're in a church and they decide to boycott something and you don't agree with it, what happens to you? You know, like, because you're either forced to go along with it, and if you don't go, I'm saying like an example, if you're not going along with, because I grew up in a very like a fundamental type of evangelical setting. So like, you know,
sure.
if there went on something like, if everyone in the church was against something and they were boycotting it and they found out that you weren't doing it, you could be ostracized, you could be looked down upon and everything else. And I'm like, that's not biblical.
Okay.
That's not, it's like, and when you're doing something, that's what I'm talking about, like the coercion part. Like you're kind of like forced to go along with it. Otherwise, there's consequences, even if you don't feel the same way about it. Because it was more of a rule that was made than actually, hey, let's look at this biblically right here. They may use the Bible as a crutch, and that happens a lot in Christianity. But then again, they use it for coercion. Again, it goes back to the coercion. It's like, I'm going to use this to get my point across, to get people to do things, and the Bible should not be used in that way for some things like that. Anyway, I don't know if I'm going on a tangent, but that's where kind of like boycotting kind of leads to and everything else. That's why I think, yeah, it's fine to, in a non-violent way, you know, stand aside saying, I won't partake. As for me, as for my family, we're not going to partake in this because this is what we feel from the Bible. Like, you guys have to choose yourself. But this, you know, for that. But when you say, well, if you're not a good Christian, you're not a good follower of Jesus, if you don't do this, that's where issues start arising.
Yep. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of comment on Durian, like you said, like boycotting something like what, use the example of Planned Parenthood, right? I think, one, very polarizing topic in like our world, and rightfully so. I understand why it would be polarizing, but I think it's another issue kind of with Planned Parenthood is like, so many people view it as like, oh, this is all they do is they're just an abortion clinic, right? But they're also a lot more than that. And like, yeah, certain individuals within, you know, the Planned Parenthood system might, you know, lean that way, but there's a lot of other resources for people and stuff like that, for like, you know, just maternity care, stuff like that, that like those organizations are focused on too. And it's hard because like the media makes these big blanket, like sweeping statements of, you know, we need to boycott this, or Christians are boycotting whatever. And it's like, I think they forget to realize that like in any system, so any large system like that, whether it's making a video game or it's a place like Planned Parenthood, the amount of people working for that organization are so diverse, probably from their own faith backgrounds, that there's a lot of people that are choosing to be in that field to help other people in the best way that they can, of like offering support and offering ways to help people succeed. And especially with like things like Planned Parenthood, more so than just being like, oh yeah, we're just, you know, the big bad corporation. And I think that's like a hard distinction to make, is because people like the black and white, right? It's easier when you can just say something is good or bad. And so yeah, I think that's a hard one, right?
I think to go along with what you're saying. Sorry, Temple, you want to go? Then okay. I think to go on what you're saying is also to remember about like, people say, oh, you need to protest Planned Parenthood. My question is like, what is your church doing to help those people that are going to Planned Parenthood? I'm just seriously like, if you're gonna be like, I don't want people to go there, does your church have funds to help people go to other doctors? Does your church have fund to help come alongside mothers, single moms, everything else, or even families to help provide either get the medical help that, I'm just saying like this, if you're in a bigger church, or even a smaller church, like, what are you involved in? Are you involved in the crisis pregnancy centers that come alongside people like this? Are you supporting those and everything? Is there, it's one thing saying and protesting something, but what are you doing? Because Christ has called us to do something, not just say something. And we can say all we want and everything, and preferably, I was like, with Planned Parenthood and stuff like that, it's like, I'd rather there be like an alternative option, basically, that Christians, and there's Christian organization stuff. It's like, but are you promoting those? Are you making them better? Are you pointing people towards them? Or are you coming alongside, non-judging those people who are at Planned Parenthood and helping them and loving them? And so that's how it's like, what is the flip side? What can you do instead of like judging, basically? And because, yes, I know, Planned Parenthood, they provide services that are not biblical and everything else. But there's like, I guess I can go down a rabbit hole. I can get myself in trouble too, but with what I was about to say. But there's other things that do things that are not biblical, but we're not as up in arms about that as well. And I'm trying to be careful with my words here. But my main point is like, okay, if you don't like Planned Parenthood, what are you doing? And are you volunteering at a crisis pregnancy center? Are you doing something about it instead of just saying I don't like it?
Are you obligated to?
Anyway, I mean, that's another thing now. It depends on the individual.
Is someone obligated to actively engage in like something counter to it in order to have an opinion about something? Like, is that a requirement for people?
I mean, that brings the whole thing is like, I guess you can be, I don't know. Help me out, guys. What do you think? That's like, I need to think about this. Because you want to be careful about not being hypocritical either. So if you say you're against something, but you're doing nothing, can you be seen as hypocritical? And so I'm from a perspective from a world outside looking in. And
okay. So frame it this way then. There is unfortunately a lot of poverty in the world. There is unfortunately a lot of evil in the world. There's unfortunately a lot of blank, whatever you want to fill in around the world. Are we obligated to help every single charity, every single organization, every single everything under the sun? That's the helping perspective. No, we're not obligated to. By the same token, are we obligated to boycott every single thing that's doing bad, every single thing that's doing whatever? I think there's more of a precedent set for fleeing from sin and fleeing from evil and fleeing from bad things. So does that equal boycotting? Like, I don't, we can define that term if we want to. To me, that doesn't equal boycotting. That's just like ignoring or turning away. Like, I'm not actively sending people that I have in my ministry towards Planned Parenthood. You can believe that. I believe we have other crisis prevention places. We have better ways of dealing with things. Like, I'm plugged into adoption centers, et cetera, et cetera. But that's that one specific little problem. I think this is where living in the gray again, living in the tension comes in, where there are other alternatives to things that we may say we want to boycott. There was the whole boycott of Chick-fil-A, which people still make fun of. And like, okay, I mean, I understand. I completely understand. It's on an unfounded, misguided principle. It was about homosexuality, LGBTQ rights, and that's not at all what the True Kathy comment was. But like, I have a Chick-fil-A 2 minutes from my house that I like eating at because that freaking chicken is like crack, and I'm not going to boycott them. But also, like, right around the same time that people started boycotting Chick-fil-A, Popeyes came out with their chicken sandwich. This is a very base level argument, but like, there was an alternative to that thing happening. People became educated about the other stuff that was around there, and then they went and they did the other thing. So, like, on the one hand, I think active boycotting and the social media posting and the flaming and all that other stuff, I don't usually ever think that's the right thing to do. I do think there is a space for education. There is a space for learning. There is a space for listening. There is a space for asking questions and making an informed decision about Chick-fil-A, about Planned Parenthood, about J.K. Rowling, about VWs, about whatever else we've talked about.
Bougie raised an interesting question in the chat, which was the idea that whether choosing to abstain for something or not, he said choosing to abstain or not participate is not boycotting, in my opinion.
Agreed.
To me, I thought that was basically the definition of boycotting. Was just choosing not to do something or encouraging other people not to do it.
I think that's I think that's where, if we define our terms, the boycott itself is the active and willing participant in a negative campaign towards something. Abstinence is just not doing it. So, like, when you fast, you abstain from food. I'm not boycotting food. I'm not actively showing up on social media and posting about it. So I think that's where the two things differ. They both start at the same level of not doing something. The boycott itself is actually taking steps to raise public awareness of, I'm not doing this, so this is why I'm trying to coerce people. That's where the second part is.
Yeah, does it have to be coercing people though? Like, I feel like there's this connotation that you guys are drawing between boycotting something and like some sort of forced action, like trying to like twist people's arm into doing it. Where to me, I've always understood boycotting is just like, I'm not going to do it. Here's why I don't think you should do it either. And like, here are all the bad things that this company or whoever did, and like that's why you shouldn't do it.
Well,
like, to me, that's a boycott.
Well, you're coercing, I think, is the second level of trying to convince somebody. I think that's where the other thing, like, if I'm abstaining from buying a Nike shoe, people are gonna ask me, hey, why do you wear Adidas? And I'm gonna say, like, well, I just don't buy Nike shoes. And then if they're gonna take it to that second level and ask me why, I'm gonna tell them, well, they were made in sweatshops and yada yada yada. That's me giving them knowledge. But then there's that split second there where it's me trying to, like, push them into a decision to not buy Nikes, or just giving them information. At that point, in my head, that's where the split happens.
Right.
So yeah, it forces someone to accept your beliefs.
I will say, Bougie, you definitely try to boycott coffee. Just
if you think something is harmful to society, do you feel like people have an obligation then to speak out against it?
Well, if this is where we're going to get into biblical here, can I jump in real quick? Or do you want to go?
I mean, not necessarily. Like, the people who are protesting Hogwarts Legacy believe that by supporting this property, you're thereby supporting J.K. Rowling, who, in their opinion, has basically unacceptable views that are harmful to a group of people and harmful to society, right? So that's why they are opposing this. Now, we can get into the actions they're taking, because they're going beyond what I've talked about in terms of just stating their opinion into actually harassing people who've been playing the game, which I think is a line, crossing a line into territory that I think we all generally would agree is not acceptable. But the question is, like, as Christians, if we do see something happening that is we think is fundamentally harmful to the society in which we live, do we have any sort of obligation to speak out against it? Because certainly I think that's been the justification for things like all the opposition to Harry Potter, many years ago when the books were coming out or the movies were coming out, for that Christians were saying this is witchcraft, this is whatever, or opposition to D&D, which we've talked about on the show in the past. I would think anyway, have felt like an obligation to speak out against it, to encourage other Christians not to participate, because they believe it's fundamentally either harmful to them or harmful to the society in which we live. If you believe that about something, wouldn't you then have some obligation to at least speak out against it?
But isn't there like
Yeah,
a
I think.
difference? Because go ahead, Doc. Go ahead.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think the for me a big difference between where you kind of draw that distinction, that line, right? I think educating people on like your own stance and your own opinion is one thing. I think where the discussion kind of came from, and like a lot of the TikToks I've seen about Hogwarts Legacy is like, if you buy the game, you're a bad person, right? There's
Hmm.
that's the tagline of the meme, right? It's when people make that shift of like, from I'm educating you of why I'm not going to do a certain thing, to like that next logical leap of like, if person does X, I'm going to paint them in a negative light, or mark them as a bad person. Um, and I think that's like where that element of the coercion and the boycotting kind of like happens, right? When I think of like something I'm going to abstain from, I like that Chino brought up fasting, right? Because the Bible literally says like, when you're fasting, like, wash your head, like clean yourself up, don't gnash your teeth and say like, oh, look at me how I'm suffering. It's like, you do it quietly. It is for you and your own benefit, right? That's the abstaining side. It's this is something that I'm not going to be a part of. I don't think it's formative to my faith. I think it could be a stumbling block for me. So I'm going to separate myself from that. The difference is like, I'm going to separate myself, and then I'm going to tell people about how good I am because I did the thing.
Hmm.
I think that's when you elevate yourself above your like kind of station of like where we should be worrying about it, right? When to bring it back to Hogwarts Legacy, right? If you don't want to support the game, don't do it. If you think this is a stumbling block for you and like how you view yourself in the world and like how you want to interact with it, then don't do it. Like, you shouldn't do something that might cause you to stumble, right? That's a big thing. And if this is a stumbling block for you, then don't do it. Like, but then when people do it, just as I think I posted earlier, of like the verse from Romans of like don't judge one another, just don't put stumbling blocks in the hindrance of other people. So the person like me, myself, who like don't agree with like the judgment that J.K. Rowling has said, and I don't agree with most of what J.K. Rowling has said in her personal life, because if you just go on her Twitter feed, you were in for a wild ride. Like I said, I pulled up before this meeting here. She literally is on a quote saying, "If you don't like her books, you should start burning libraries." So I don't think her perspective is well adjusted to reality, right?
Seems
So
reasonable.
that's not a normal response, but it hinders people who like myself will go like, "Oh, this looks like a really fun game." But if the world around me, and I just want to enjoy a single player game where I get to fly around on a hippogriff and like collect mushrooms in the forest to make potions and have a good
Heck yeah.
time, like, I don't want to have the thing of just like, oh, by the way, there's a bunch of group of people that if I stream this, there's gonna be like, well, you're one of the bad people, and you're like, with no understanding of like who I am as a person. They just go, oh, you bought the bad game equals bad person.
Hmm.
And I just think so many of these things are like, people love blanket statements. It's easier to go through life, and I think that's where the coercion happens, right? It's when your intent goes from, I'm gonna abstain for my own reasons and like not hinder my own development and growth, to I need to educate people not on why it's bad, but what makes them bad for doing it. That's my personal distinction.
Sure. Okay.
I think
Yeah, sure.
I think Bougie
Yeah, go ahead, Naps.
brought up something good. He said coercion isn't necessarily a thing. It's generating or furthering the echo chamber. Then he put parentheses, my opinion. But generating or furthering an echo chamber, basically. So that's kind of interesting to think about.
Sure.
That
Okay.
was interesting, he said.
So it's interesting points. I guess one thing I want to touch on before we get out of here, unless someone else has like something else they want to add to what Doc was saying there, but I did want to talk briefly about the point that Nav brought up about, are Christians somehow responsible, or at least did they contribute to this sort of modern version of boycotting / cancel culture because of their activities throughout the last, I don't know, 20, 30 years in being against all these various properties or films or whatever the case might be. So do you guys believe that Christians have sort of contributed to that tendency now that we have in society to do that?
I just
And this is open.
I just kind of see it. Okay, so okay. I just kind of see it as the pendulum swings, basically. Like in our country, especially if you go back to like the 70s and 80s, with what was it, the Satanic Panic? You know, we talked about that before. You know, it was like basically D&D was bad. You know, all secular music was bad. You know, Pokemon. Then in the 90s, Pokemon was bad. You know, you just go through. Video games were bad for a while. Even I remember it's like old like news. There was a news station that talked about Mario Kart, how it could make your kids become addicted to stuff and like stuff like that. This is like an actual thing, and I'm like, where did this all stem from? There was a lot of Christians at the time, even just like pushing like video games were bad. I've had youth pastors that did not like video games, and they preached against video games. I remember those. Okay, and this was like in the 2000s, like, you know, saying, you know, if you played video games, you're just wasting your life. I'm like, but if you read Lord of the Rings all in one day, that's like fiction. Anyway, but see, like in my mind, I'm just thinking like, why can't I play video? If I can, it's okay for me to read for 10 hours in one day, but I can't play video games for a couple of minutes. That's
fair enough.
That's, in my mind as a kid, and
Exactly.
but a lot of this was just because of, yeah, a lot of this was just kind of like the pendulum kind of swung, and it swung to the other side. Then you kind of see it swinging. Well, it's kind of like in the middle because both sides are doing it now. Whether it's like the culture, whether it's Christians, it's kind of like both are just doing it whenever they want to now. But it seemed like it was one way, then it swung. That's what I was saying. And now it's kind of like a free for all out in the world.
Yeah,
Okay.
to echo your point of like way back in the day, reading fantasy novels was considered like one of the worst things you could do because it was going to corrupt your mind. You'd never be a functioning part of society anymore because you just devolve into the book and you'd never leave because, you know, you read Alice in Wonderland, like, and there'd be nothing for you in life because you'd just lose yourself to it. So I feel like every era like we have, there's always one thing in our society that kind of becomes a vilified thing. I don't know if it's just human nature that we have to look for one thing that we just like don't like because it's different. Like, you know, in the next few months it's going to be AI, like as things progress, right? But we started with like someone wrote read a Sherlock Holmes book, and someone's judging them for going like, oh, you're reading that fantasy stuff, do you even like want to work anymore? Like, what's wrong with you? Where's your work ethic? Like we were there at one point, and now, you know, as the world progresses, there's always been a new thing of like, oh, you're doing this again? Oh man, why don't you do something productive with your life? There's always something that people are going to choose to just be like, well, look at you, why are you like this? And you're like, I don't know.
Chino, any final thoughts before we start to wrap up here?
Man, don't buy VW bugs. No, I'm kidding. They're awful. And they got the little flower in the front.
I mean,
yeah, that's
VW did lie about
the
their whole
aesthetic.
diesel thing.
They
Remember
did,
when
and
that
the
was a
emissions
couple
thing.
years
They got
ago?
popped for that. No, the only thing I would say is that this, just like any topic that we talk about, I hate this as a pastor when I have to talk to people about questions that they feel have a solid yes or no answer. And my answer when I come back to them is, I don't know. That's going to be up to you, and you need to do research on it. And you need to settle what feels good and what works with your own faith walk for you. Like if you and your conscience can do that, then great. If you and your, now obviously there are some things that you shouldn't be doing, but like stuff like this, we live squarely in the gray, and the gray sucks. Especially for a pastor, the gray sucks. So like, end of the day, read the Bible and love Jesus and make your own decisions. Like, I'm not going to sound like some of them QAnon people, but like, hey, do your own research and figure it out. There you go.
All right, well said. Just jumping into the chat here before we start to wrap up a bit. Bougie is so far beyond us coffee drinkers. He just doesn't even consider us anymore. He's past us already. He let us know that. So thank you, Bougie.
A tip of the cap.
not even inside your realm anymore. You're so far beyond us coffee drinkers. Then Z Emperor mentioned, listening to this brings up a question in my mind. Where is the line between boycotting and virtue signaling? Or where is the line? Which is an interesting question. How much of what you're saying is just to make yourself look good? There's certainly no shortage of causes these days that people are willing to change their profile pictures for all the good that accomplishes. So I might be giving away a little bit of my thoughts on that with that statement, but it certainly is a very fine line when you're expressing views on things about how much is just telling people what you think and how much of it is trying to look good to others. These days, it probably has to do more with what the opinion is than anything else. Bougie said, wherever you draw the line, it's different for everyone. I think that's partially true. Zeph mentioned, I mean, if you're not going to work but playing a video game and ignoring your responsibilities, then it can lead to sin. Sure. Yep, of course. I mean, if something takes over your life, and certainly we've talked in the past about idols or dedicating so much of our lives to things other than the Lord and serving Him, then the dangers with that. And yeah, and then a lot of bickering about coffee. So, but thank you everyone for being here, for contributing to the discussion.
One last thing.
Go ahead, Nav.
Okay. Can I close with 2 verses from the scriptures real quick? I think this would be good.
Please
1 Corinthians 5:12. 1 Corinthians 5:12 and 13. What business of mine, this is Paul speaking, what business is it of mine to judge those outside the church? Are you not to judge those inside? God will judge those outside. And then in James 1:27, religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress and keep oneself from being polluted by the world. And I think like the key things is keep oneself polluted from the world. And then also, it's like, yes, we're supposed to do it right, but God is in control and He will judge those outside as well. And He's like, take care of your own house first before looking out. And there's a whole passage in 1 Corinthians 5 talking about that. And so I think when we go to boycotting, from boycotting, virtual signaling to all of that, we should keep those things in mind. There we go. Here's my sermon.
Okay, very good. Bringing it back to scripture as we wrap up. That's good. All right, well, that just about does it for us today. For anyone hanging out, if you're not a part of our Discord, please go over to Discord/Lux Digital Church and please join up. Doc put in the chat there. Thank you, Doc. Yeah, thank you all for joining me today. Feel free to jump into a roundtable discussion and put your opinion about this stuff, your thoughts about, the boycotts, what's the role for Christians in that? Are Christians responsible for any part of that, or anything that we talked about today or we didn't quite get to that you think would have been interesting for us to touch on? As always, please feel free to suggest topics for our upcoming episodes. Next week, we're going to be talking about episode 4 and 5 of The Last of Us. And hopefully, with only talking about 2 episodes, we'll have time to get to our list of the best adapted video game adaptations that we were unable to get to last week. So that's what's up for next Friday. So from me, from Chino, from Doc, and from Nav, hope you all have a great weekend and a great upcoming week. And I will see you around Discord, all right? God bless, guys.